Hey, everyone! Before we dive into today's chilling creepypasta, I want to give a massive shout out to the incredibly talented Thomas Stewart, the author of the story we are about to read. He has a terrifying new book coming out on June 4th titled The Homicidal Artists. Trust me, you won't want to miss this one. If you're as excited as I am, you'll be thrilled to know that pre-orders go active at the end of this month. So, mark your calendars and get ready for a thrilling ride with the Homicidal Artists. Now, let's get back to tonight's story. Welcome, brave souls, to Fear File Chronicles, your one-way ticket to spine-chilling stories and terrifying tales. Tonight, we'll be diving into the darkest corners of the human mind with a story. This was how I found out I had a brother. It was not a happy reunion either. Final, penned by the twisted mind of Corpse Child. Together, we'll explore the unexplained and face our deepest fears. But before we begin, if you enjoy trembling and terror, be sure to hit that like button, share this video with your fellow fear fanatics, and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to click the bell notification so you never miss an eerie episode. Your support truly means the world to us, so feel free to leave a comment below to join the Fear File Chronicles community. Now, without further ado, let's unravel the mysteries of the unknown together as we delve into tonight's fear-inducing story. This was how I found out I had a brother. It was not a happy reunion either. Final. Dim the lights and prepare yourself for a chilling journey into the Fear File Chronicles. I took off again down the road. It wasn't 2 seconds later that I heard the cruiser tailing me, right on my heels. Just faintly, thanks to the now millionth adrenaline rush I was experiencing. I could hear the officer shouting at me to stop where I was. I didn't stop though. The way I knew it, my life, no, my fucking soul itself was on the line. Adrenaline rush or not though, he eventually caught up to me and cut me off. I was stopped by a brick wall at the end of the street. The cruiser parked right in front of me. The officer got out and began walking toward me slowly again. I backed myself against the wall. My heart thundered, pulsing so loud I could hear it in my ears.
"Just calm down, son,"
the officer said, reaching his hand out to me while inching ever closer. I pressed further against the wall, like I thought there'd be a chance I'd actually go through it and be able to keep running if I just pushed against it hard enough. He came to about a foot or so from me, and I closed my eyes. As hard as it may have been to believe, I actually found myself wishing he would have been able to take over again. I hate it, but I actually wished he could have taken control again, if only to get me out of this situation. Though even then, I wasn't stupid. If I did that, he wouldn't have given my body back. He can't have me. The officer quickly jerked my wrist and I was dragged along to the car. "Let me go," I shrieked.
"Hey, just calm down, son."
He let go of my wrist as soon as we reached the cruiser again. I was about to take off again when he shot out his hand in front of me, saying,
"Hold on, just stay there for me, all right?
"What are you gonna do with me?
Look, I'm just wanting to make sure you're somewhere safe, all right?"
Are you gonna take me to jail?" I remember boring into his eyes with mine, looking absolutely pathetic as hell. His eyebrows cocked, looking sideways at me like I'd just asked him if the moon was made of Swiss cheese.
"What?" "No, son. I'm just gonna bring you to the station and see if I can get a hold of your folks, okay?"
My breathing slowed down a little, only a little. I looked him up and down, finding nothing to indicate that he was trying to trick me. None that I could recognize anyway. Without another word, I turned and climbed into the back seat of the police cruiser. The drive there was done in almost complete silence, without so much as a single peep from either of us, or even the scanner up front. It was a short ride as well, lasting probably not even 10 minutes. And when we got there, he escorted me inside quietly and led me into a small, almost cramped room with a table and a couple of chairs around it. He told me to have a seat, and so I did, and he sat directly across from me. He pulled out a small tape recorder and sat it down, pressing the red button down.
Please state your name,
he said. Gregory Sanford.
How old are you, Gregory?
I'm 7 years old.
Right, now here's what we're going to do here. Your mother's on the phone now and she'll be on her way soon. So in the meantime, I just want to go ahead and get your side of the story for the record, okay?
Oh, okay.
All right, so Gregory, can you tell me everything that happened prior to being found in the middle of the road?
But I already told you. I remember running from the hospital. That's it.
Why?
He asked. Why what?
Why were you running from the hospital?
I don't know. I began shrinking down in my chair, shaking violently.
It's okay, son. Just breathe.
I did, taking a deep breath that, sure enough, was actually somewhat soothing.
Just tell me everything you can remember. Okay, you're not in any trouble right now. I just need to make sure no one's after you or anything, okay?
But someone is after me. Okay. I closed my eyes and thought back to the previous night. Once again, all that came back to me was a complete blur. I could only remember fragments of me running down the hallway, then being cornered, then the alleyway, and then
I want to be free, to get clear of your worthless ass.
my eyes snapped back to attention and I blurted out, he was coming for me. He frowned, alarmed.
Who was?
I don't know his name, but he's always been mean to me, and I was at the hospital to try and make him go away.
You're saying someone was stalking you?
I shrugged. I guess. I don't really know. I started looking around the room, wishing to God I could just leave. Just go and run all the way back to the hospital, or better yet, run back home to my mother.
Can you describe what he looks like?
No. His eyebrow raised. I've never seen what he looked like before.
Really?
He asked.
Then how do you know he's after you?
He's always talking to me, always bothering me.
I see. You have any idea why?
He says he wants me.
For what?
I shrugged again.
Has he ever hurt you?
No.
What about anybody else?
My head pounded, prone to exploding. I don't know, sir. Can we please stop? Please. I gave him that same pathetic stare from before. The two of us stared at each other for a moment before he said,
Okay then.
and turned off the recorder. Then he stood up and walked out of the room, and I was left sitting alone. I want to say it was about 20 minutes later that he came back in, this time accompanied by my parents and another officer. Before I'd have the chance to do so myself, Mom ran up to me and seized me in a bear hug so tight, I was sure my head was going to pop straight off my neck like some sort of ketchup packet or something.
Are you okay?
She cried.
Oh, sweet, merciful God, I was so worried. Oh, God, my Greggy.
With my face pressed against her chest, I tried as hard as I could to tell her, I'm okay, Mom. The officer asked them to sit down, and they did, with Mom continuing to compress my body as close to hers as possible.
Is everything going to be okay?
Asked Dad.
Everything should be fine as far as your son goes. He won't be going to prison, though he won't be going back to the hospital either.
Why not?
Asked Mom.
Ma'am, your son hospitalized 3 of the staff, one of which, from what I've been told so far, is in real bad shape.
Mom exchanged between me and the officer a look of both fear and confusion combined.
Him, Gregory, my boy, hurt people, but
She looked at me again and exclaims,
he's just a little boy.
Calm down, Teresa.
said Dad.
No, I won't. How are you going to sit here and tell me that my boy went and hurt other people?
It's okay, Mom, I said in a small, pathetic voice. She looked at me. I did it.
Gregory, no, honey, it's okay. You're not.
No, Mom, I did do it.
What do you mean?
They said they were going to take me to another place, and I knew that meant I wouldn't get to see you anymore. So I panicked. I looked at the officers for a second and then returned to Mom. I was running out of the hospital and then I woke up in the road where
Where I found you.
finished the officer. Yeah.
But you couldn't have. You just couldn't.
Her face was the dictionary definition of petrified. Mom, my voice was now that of a 3-year-old almost. Who is my brother? Her face froze then.
Your what?
She asked in an almost whispering voice. My brother. She continued to look at me like I'd asked her aliens were real.
You don't have.
Yeah, I do, Mom. He keeps telling me that he's my brother.
Who is telling you that?
Him, Mom. The one who's always bothering me. I could hear her breath rapidly increasing. He says you know who he is and that you kept him from me.
I don't.
She looked at Dad. Dad exchanged glances back and forth between her and me. Out of the corner of my right eye, I watched the 2 officers glance at each other and back to me as well. Faintly, I think I even saw the one officer quietly click the red button on the recorder though. At least at the time, I wasn't quite sure. Everything seemed to happen so fast while at the same time stand perfectly still.
I don't understand, Gregory. You don't have a brother. I mean...
She trailed off, her eyes doubling in size and looking at Dad. What, Mom? She didn't answer, continuing to look at Dad. I began shaking her. What, Mom? What is it? Tell me, she only continued stuttering.
We were told.
She stammered quietly, though not quiet enough for me not to hear. Told what? Her head swung back and forth between me, Dad, and the other officers one final time before burying her face into her palms. In that moment, 2 things then happened, sort of at the exact same time. I felt it happen again, being shut out from my body again, at the same time that my mother began crying, sobbing in Dad's arms. This time, for the first and only time, I actually tried fighting him. It was a sort of cerebral struggle, with me fighting him with nothing but a dormant sort of survival instinct. One that just presented itself out of nowhere. I had no idea how I was doing it. And to this day, I still don't know. But I was actually managing to hold him back. At least a bit. Enough so that he wouldn't take over fully. My body began jerking, vibrating rapidly like I was about to explode. Thanks to the overall atmosphere of panic, I don't think anyone noticed. That was until my arms began flailing, pushing the table a good 4 or 5 inches away from where I was sitting. Take into account that standing up, this table was meeting at least nose level with me and was solid steel. At least, that's what I thought it was. In other words, there shouldn't have been any way I, with my bare hands, should have been able to move this big-ass table. The way I did, the room appeared to me to be shaking. Everything and everyone was pulsing at a supersonic rate, stretching and distorting. For me, it was like trying to fight against him. My brother was tearing open a hole in reality. My body felt the way it would if it were being put through at least 5, maybe 6 or 7 rounds in a blender on its strongest settings. But it was just shy of impossible for me to discern any actual words from them. I could hear my name and what I think were the words. Are you okay? Now, notice I said this was true for the people in the room. His voice, on the other hand, was a different story altogether. I could hear him clear as ever. No, actually, I take that back. His voice was somehow even more clear to me than ever before. I could still feel everything, perceive everything, but he still had the wheel and there still wasn't a goddamn thing I could do about it either. There was more than this, though. I wasn't just able to hear his voice, but I could actually hear his thoughts as well. They were all swarming, jumbled, frenzied, like they were all a horde of yellow jackets whose nest had just been kicked. One thing they all had in common with me, though, was that they were all angry.
Does it look like I'm okay?
Were the words angrily spat out of my mouth, though not in my voice.
Yeah, sure. I'm just fucking fine. My bitch of a mother just continues denying I exist. That's all.
I could see everyone in the room staring at me, horrified, and, faintly, I heard Mom's voice call out my name, reaching out for me. My hand grabbed hers and jerked her to meet face to face with me.
Gregory isn't here, Mom.
I shouted.
It's me, remember? The one that should have been fucking born.
Complete and total fear permeated her green eyes.
Do you remember? Well, bitch, do you?
Her head shook wildly.
What the fuck do you mean no?
I don't know who you are. Just let me go. You're hurting me.
Oh, I'm hurting you. Jesus, I see where Gregory gets it from being such a little puss bag.
I watched him jerk her arm again, this time hurling her across the room. I watched one of the officers reach for his holster while the other ran to help Mom. Dad attempted to rush me and took a kneecap straight into his groin for it.
Oh, you want some too,
he said, standing over Dad's writhing body, turning him over onto his back, my foot raised in the air, coming down hard straight on his nose, instantly crushing it. Even through all the distortion that was reality for me at the moment, I could hear Dad's cries of agony echoing through my head.
Yeah, bet that feels real fucking good, don't it, old man?
Dad could only groan in response. He was kicked hard in the ribs and he shouted,
Doesn't it? I asked you a question, motherfucker.
Back away from him right now,
shouted one of the officers, aiming his gun right in between my eyes.
Oh, are you gonna shoot me?
He asked, sounding eager. I watched as my hands picked Dad up off the ground and held him up in front of me as a meat shield.
Go ahead, copper. Fucking do it. Go ahead and shoot. Do me a favor, why don't ya?
The officer's hands began to lower.
Come on, do it.
He shouted, thrusting Dad forward.
Do it, motherfucker.
It was at this time that I could feel myself trying to fight again. I had little to absolutely no strength left, but I had to keep fighting. I just had to. I had to protect my family, and most importantly, I had to protect myself. I could feel my arm starting to twitch, my hand raised, shaking. Wait! I heard myself shout out in my voice. The officers both stood frozen, both with a look of sheer confusion plastered across their faces. My body began jerking, only slightly at first, before becoming more and more violent as it went on. Every muscle, every nerve, all fired off, all at once in my body. Imagine for a second an old video or footage of someone suffering from the effects of shell shock, the physical effects at least. The way that every part of their body simultaneously seizes all at the same time. A seizure on steroids, essentially. I could feel every second of it, every second where me and him fought each other tooth and claw over control of my body.
What's happening to him?
Mom cried. The officers, I saw, glanced briefly at her before looking back at me. I crumpled to my knees, convulsing, screaming out, "No, get out! You can't have me, go away!" With every seize, it felt like some part of my body was being slowly, painfully dismembered, like someone was jamming a crowbar in between my joints and forcing them apart, everywhere, from head to foot, my arms, legs, head, fingers, toes, and especially my chest, all tightened and twisted. A part of me was sure I was suffering from a heart attack. My vision began shifting, warping and twisting, making the room change shapes, colors, even its dimensions. I remember opening my mouth to cry out for help or just to scream, only for pathetic groaning to be the only thing that came out. It stayed like this for a while, circling all of the outer edges of my eyes. I could see him struggling to take over. He was desperately trying to cover my eyes completely, and I knew damn well if that happened, that was it. I wouldn't be coming back. I had to push him back, push him out. It was me or him, and I was not going to let him win. "Get out!" I screamed again. I could hear him reply in his demonic bellow.
Fuck you. You're mine.
Right then, my chest thrusted upwards with the pain of something stabbing me dead, in the middle of my sternum. My chest was ripping in half.
This is mine.
He roared.
Mine. Mine.
No, I won't let you. My right arm snapped itself almost 360 degrees on its joint. Pain surged from my arm and throughout my aching chest. I watched the others come rushing toward me. I shot out my hand and shouted, "Don't! Stay back!" They froze again while I was forced bolt upright with another painful seizure. My body felt now as though it were trying to split itself in half.
Gregory.
Mom cries again. I barely hear her. He started causing all 4 of my limbs to start breaking themselves before snapping back in place. I was barely able to hold on. Finally, I used one last trick. I figured I had up my sleeve against him. With the control he possessed over my limbs, he seemed unable to do anything with my head itself, hence perhaps why he hadn't already done so to snap my neck. Looking back, I chalk this up to the fact that he must have known that, had he done that, it would killed him too. The same with why he didn't kill me by actually causing me to have an actual heart attack. In short, I've realized that the reason he'd never attempted to kill me, including even the moment when he tried suffocating me, was because as much as he claimed to hate me, he needed me. He knew that if I were to push up daisies, then so would he. Using what pathetic excuse of strength reserve I somehow still had in me, I began banging the shit out of my head against the cobblestone flooring of the room. Harder and harder, I hit the floor until eventually, my vision started exploding into stars and clouds. I still kept going. It hurt, and I could feel my brain shattering like a flower vase inside my skull, but I kept going. It was all I had left, the only thing I was sure would work to keep my brother from taking my body. Consciousness began slipping away from me. My eyes slowly faded to black. Only I knew it wasn't him taking over this time. The more my head struck the floor, the further and further back I watched him reel into the far, dark recesses of my mind. I realized then, as the last of my consciousness faded, that it was my head, something in it that was keeping him bound to me. But what though? Don't ask me how much later it was when I finally woke up. I'm pretty sure at least a day or 2 had passed while I was out. I'll say that much. When I finally did awaken, I was in the hospital. Everything was still all blurry, and I couldn't very well distinguish any shapes or anything around me. Other than that, there were people around me, mumbling something, God only knew what. My head swiveled limply on my neck, like my neck was only a kickstand, trying to support the 30-pound rock that was my head. I couldn't see or hear well, but I was certain of one thing. I was still me. Whatever control he had over my body, it was gone. I could move my arms and legs as I pleased, though obviously, at least at that time, not very much thanks to the multiple fractures in each. I was still whole. He was gone. I didn't show it, being as groggy and disoriented as I was, but I was elated, realizing this. I was cured. I wouldn't have to worry about him harassing me anymore. I couldn't even feel him around me like I always had before. I had won. He was gone. But who was he really? This question, though having very little room in my battered brain to do so, swam around in circles for hours until finally my mother and father walked in.
Gregory.
Mom squealed, running over to my bed just like she had at the police station. And just like then, too. The first thing she did was to embrace me in the single tightest bear hug I'd ever experienced, bar none. She spent almost a good 20 or 30 seconds sobbing over me before picking and clearing herself up.
Are you okay, sweetie?
She asked, sniffling. I nod dizzily. She hugs me tight again and plants a firm kiss on my forehead. Mama?
Yes? What is it, sweetie?
Did I ever have a brother? For a moment, she looked at me the same way she had at the station before dropping her eyes down at the bed.
No, but...
She trailed off, looking at Dad. His face almost mirrored hers, a perfect portrait of some inner regret. But what, Mom?
But you were supposed to,
chimed Dad. My eyes, though still heavy and dazed, grew when I heard this. Wait, what do you mean? I asked. I could hear Mom softly begin sobbing into her palms.
You were supposed to have a twin brother.
But what? What happened?
There were complications, little buddy. Your mother tried as best she could, but your brother was stuck, and so the doctors had to operate. When they did, though, it was too late. Your brother was...
He trailed off. He didn't need to say anything else, though. I put my arm around Mom, closely embracing her. She brought her head up and sniffled, smiling at me through her tears. "I love you, Mom," I said absent-mindedly, out of instinct. She kissed my forehead and replied,
Oh, Gregory, I love you. We're gonna get through this, okay? I promise.
She held out her pinky to me. I wrapped my pinky around hers. From that day on, I never heard from my brother again. Things slowly got better after that. I ended up being cleared of the police's radar, thanks to the audio recording by the officers of the incident at the station. I was deemed not in control of myself. I'm pretty sure they didn't actually know the full extent of just how not in control I was. Probably chalking it all up to some kind of mental illness. Just like they had in the beginning of all this, but that's on them. I know what it really was. The last thing I'll say is that despite everything, in spite of the torment he caused me for so long, and in spite of all the people he'd hurt, I can't help but feel terrible for what I had to do in the end. He was a bully, sure, a monster even, but he couldn't really help it, could he? He was supposed to be born with me, and yet he wasn't. I think, somehow, when I was born, he'd managed to attach a piece of himself to me, a sort of desperate act at preservation. In a way then, I guess, he was only doing what was natural. In this same vein, I'm not sure I can blame him for what he'd done to me. Not entirely. If it was you, and your only hope for existing at all was to attach yourself to your sibling or even try to invade their body altogether, what would you do? Would you have accepted your fate? Or would you have tried to find your own way like he did? Perhaps, such is only the paradox of a brotherly bond. Who knows? Well, my friends, we've reached the end of tonight's chilling tale. This was how I found out I had a brother. It was not a happy reunion either. Final, by the talented Corpse Child. I hope you've enjoyed our descent into darkness, and that you'll carry a piece of the Fear File Chronicles with you as you drift into uneasy dreams. If our story left you shivering and shaking, don't forget to like this video, share it with others who crave a good scare, and subscribe to the Fear File Chronicles for more haunting horrors. Remember to hit the bell notification so you're always among the first to know when a new nightmare awaits. As always, we appreciate your support and would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Sharing your fears and frights with us truly means a lot, so don't be shy to engage with our sinister community. Until next time, remember to embrace the darkness, for it is within the shadows that our most terrifying stories are born. Good night, and stay scared.